Welcome back, everybody. It's December, and this is the December issue of Conversations with Archbishop Kurtz. Welcome.
Wow, it's hard to believe that it's already the month of December.
We should play Jingle Bells or something.
Exactly.
Now, this is just Advent at the beginning here, and we're heading towards Christmas, but it's an important show today. As usual, we're going to talk about a couple different things. I want to start by talking with you about end of an era that's just occurred, and then we'll have a special guest in the mid-segment as you'll do your interview, and then we'll have a special message from you at the end. But the starting point of the show, Archbishop, this is a monumental time. You've just completed, at the end of November, a 3-year term as president of the Bishops' Conference of the United States. I know that's been significant for you. Frankly, it's been significant for the whole Church of the Archdiocese of Louisville and the Church of the country. And we're blessed that you were in that role. And thanks for taking some time today just to talk about what that experience has been.
Happy to do that, Brian. You know, I have to say a special word of thanks too, because it is quite a commitment of time and energy. There's no question. It's an act of service, but it also is a time of commitment for everybody. So for yourself and all who have worked so hard, that has made it even easier. And I've said before, and I think you would agree, that being engaged in the adventure of being the president of the Bishops' Conference is mutually beneficial, because it allows us to learn what's happening beyond the Archdiocese, but also for me to be able to showcase some of the things within the Archdiocese that we correctly are proud of.
Sure. Well, you know, there's been the new Pope you've interacted with. You've had, two synods?
2 synods, exactly.
You've traveled to numerous countries and continents even, and I know met lots of people and been to lots of places and dealt with some challenging times, including an election. So, let's start on the positive. What has been the high points for you?
Yeah. Well, unquestionably, the contact with Pope Francis.
Good.
Each year, I've had the opportunity to meet face-to-face with him in Rome, and usually anywhere from a half an hour to 45 minutes, and that he's very gracious, and I think a lot was accomplished in those meetings. His visit to the United States last September, I mean, I just came back from the curial visits in early October, and I must say that everybody said, boy, they were wonderful. He said the Pope said it was stupendous. I mean, all of these things, which I think allow us to know the way in which our Holy Father felt received.
Sure.
And really was historic. I mean, when you think of his speaking at the White House, at Congress, the joint meeting of Congress, at the General Assembly of the United Nations, Ground Zero, Philadelphia, the World Meeting of Families, so many opportunities, and I think that had to be the highlight. It was really a privilege to be able to do that. I may surprise you, because I think the second highlight is actually what I was doing for about a half an hour to 45 minutes every morning for the last 3 years.
I know what this is.
Yes, and I would speak with the General Secretary. And I don't think anybody knows. It's kind of a river that flows. The President speaks with the General Secretary, who basically administers the conference. And we go through whatever's on the horizon. We try to determine a direction, and then he meets right after that with the core team, who then get things moving in the day itself. So that is I always saw that morning call as being an act of service, an act of service to the bishops, who themselves are serving the wider church. And I can't say I'll miss that, because I think after a while it comes at you pretty much, but I'll miss the contact with both was Monsignor Jenkins and now Monsignor Bransfield, 2 very good, fine men.
I am surprised you call that a highlight.
Yes.
I know that, because sometimes I wondered, and you never said it, you never complained, I wondered whether it was a burden, and you've described it as a service.
It is.
Very
well,
moving.
it's a pastoral engagement. Just as a pastor, just as a pastor gets involved, I always thought after morning mass, you usually ended up talking to 4 or 5 parishioners, and you ended up often finding out who's in the hospital, or what needs to be done, what joys, and often, unfortunately, what problems there are. But it's a moment of engagement, and I really enjoyed that. I think the other 2 two that I would mention as highlights. Maybe I'm giving you too many highlights.
No, it's
but
good.
But I think going in different parts of the world, I think in the Synod I got to know the richness of our church by interacting with bishops from throughout the world. I think in going to some of the hot spots, especially where there was devastation, to the Philippines after the tornado, on the anniversary of the earthquake, to Haiti, went to the Ukraine. I'm thinking of those very important areas. I will be going next month to Vietnam as kind of completing the work. Those are important areas to go to so that the Bishops' Conference can show solidarity, that we are one church united with our Holy Father on real life issues that are affecting human beings today.
Yeah, wow. Okay, now you had been vice president, and I think you'd been treasurer.
I was treasurer for 2 years, so this was 8 years as an officer.
So you saw it coming, but what surprised you in this as president?
I think the two things that surprised me. One was how much I enjoyed serving.
Okay.
I really must say that I guess if you're called to be a priest, like somebody who's called, like any vocation, I guess, in life, you're called to serve others. And so it gave me good satisfaction. In fact, our Holy Father mentioned this in the beginning of October. He talked about, he congratulated me for maintaining unity within the body of bishops in so many difficult situations. And I found that to be a surprise how much I enjoyed that, because I think from a distance it looks like a tangle of problems. Yeah. But actually when you get up close and you begin to work with others, there's a great satisfaction in relying on Christ in bringing people together. And I think that probably was, in a sense, a surprise to me. Sure. The other surprise was just how much I enjoyed meeting bishops from all over the world.
Okay, so
and getting to understand even different ways of thinking if you're from Asia or from Africa, from Europe. It expanded, I think, my sense of the richness of the universal church.
Let's talk about a couple of those people. I know you mentioned the Philippines and Ukraine, and you were East Africa, right. Haiti. Any particular characters? I don't mean characters in a silly sense, but people you met that you're carrying with you in a particular way.
Well, one that I brought up in my president's address. I remember going to Kharkiv, which is in the very eastern part of Ukraine last year. Be about 30 kilometers from the Russian border. Okay. This was at a time in which there was great tension because of the invasion of Crimea had just occurred. And we went to a refugee camp. Mm-hmm. And in the camp, I walked into a real little room that was a home for one family, and there was a little boy. He must have been 8 or 9 years old, who had Down syndrome. And you know, I have a great affinity because of my brother Georgie to people with Down syndrome. Well, without my asking, I said to say hello, and I went to say hello, I should say, and he jumped into my arms. Wow. And it was a beautiful act. I thought, you go all around the world. But there is, human beings are human beings.
Yeah, very good.
In many ways. And I think that certainly was a highlight of an experience. Yeah.
That's good. That's good. That's good, you, Archbishop, to have all these bishops you meet and have this young boy. That's good.
Yeah.
I know you well enough to know that besides having these experiences, you always learn something. So it may be early because it's just been a few weeks since you ended your term, but have you drawn any insights you want to name for us today?
Yeah, I think Brian, one of the things that is important is for us to rely on the Lord, to rely on Jesus. When you get confronted with such wide issues, I think of what our Holy Father must think about when he's going to bed. And I can think of the saintly John the 23rd. Remember what he said? Yes, I'm about to go to bed, so Lord, the church, you take care of the church till I get up. So there needs to be a little sense of humor. Yeah. And I think I learned that sense of humor works with a certain sense of humility, not taking ourselves so seriously that we think everything depends on us. In fact, everything depends on God. And the second thing I learned, I think, is that when you are open to it, and wanting to serve, God brings out gifts that He's given you. And I think that's a beautiful thing. It's a wonderful thing to be able to reach out and be able to use the gifts God has given us. In some ways, every person in the church through baptism has that leadership potential and leadership call.
Okay, all these adventures and these insights, and I know there's some challenges. And now you have a successor.
Right.
So I always wonder. They always say the president of the United States outgoing president leaves a note on the desk for the incoming president. So what advice would you give to your successor now?
Well, you know what? First of all, Brian, I was thrilled that Cardinal DiNardo, with whom I've worked for 3 years now, he was the vice president, and he's going to now rely on the work of the people in Houston to assist him in this, but that he was elected the president. He's going to be a wonderful president, and I'm going to be happy to support him. I don't think I have to tell him anything because I think he knows it, but the great advice is be yourself. Don't try to be someone else. What I said earlier, allow the grace that God has given you to bubble up, to come forth, because Christ gives each of us talents, and serve humbly. And I think if we do that, I think we're in good shape. And that's the advice I certainly would give our new president.
That's terrific. You know, you've written a number of columns in the Record, our newspaper, about your experience over these years. I hope you continue to write about it, because I'm sure there'll be continued insights.
Excellent.
That happen, of course.
Thanks for asking, Brian.
Sure. I could talk about this forever. But we have 2 more segments coming up. So after this short break, Archbishop, you get to interview Dr. Karen Shadle, who's our Director of Worship for the Archdiocese, and that'll be coming up just after this little break.